Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be talking about all 7 lightsaber forms and what they're all about. These forms were mostly made by the Jedi, but Sith also used the forms and they also helped to develop the forms as well. The first form that the Jedi created was Form 1, also known as Shii-Cho. It was the oldest known form of lightsaber combat, and this form was developed thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin, and its origins aren't very well known. One thing we do know is that many of the aspects of this form were taken from existing swordplay techniques. This form stood the test of time and was shaped into one of the strongest forms of lightsaber combat. It was one of the most simple and direct styles of combat. It was focused on disarming and trying not to kill the opponent at all costs. Early Jedi realized that killing could lead to the dark side, so they emphasized disarmament over killing. It was very effective against multiple opponents, and it was also popular for beginners in lightsaber combat. Although it was a simple form, when in the hands of a master, it could be quite dangerous. Masters of multiple forms would use Form 1 as a backup if their other forms weren't working on their opponent. During the Clone Wars, Form 1 was a popular choice because it was very effective against droids. One of the most notable users of Form 1 was Kit Fisto. You can see Kit Fisto showing the effectiveness of Shii-Cho when he fights General Grievous in the Clone Wars. Since Grievous simulates 4 different opponents with his 4 different lightsabers, and Shii-Cho is so good against multiple opponents, Kit Fisto absolutely dominates the whole fight. The next form that was created by the Jedi was Form 2, also known as Makashi. This form was made by the Jedi Order when the Jedi started to fight the Sith. The Jedi realized that they needed another form that focused on dueling another lightsaber-wielding opponent because Shii-Cho didn't address the lightsaber against lightsaber fights since it was created from sword fighting techniques. The reason why sword fighting and lightsaber fighting was so different was mainly because of the fact that lightsabers were so light and could be swung much faster than traditional blades. Makashi took advantage of how light a lightsaber was, unlike Shii-Cho. Form 2 was an elegant form. This form looked almost like the user was dancing around their enemy. This form was focused on dueling single opponents while trying not to get disarmed. This form was also strong at disarming enemies. It involved precise and powerful strikes to overwhelm the enemy. Before Form 2, lightsaber fights were very short and usually had high casualty rates because of the lack of saber dueling skills. But after the introduction of Form 2, duels lasted longer and less were killed. This form also led to the use of shotos, shorter secondary lightsabers, like the one used by Ahsoka Tano. Notable Form 2 users were Count Dooku, the Grand Inquisitor, Asajj Ventress, and Ki-Adi-Mundi, although Ki-Adi-Mundi used Form 2 as one of his secondary forms. The most powerful Form 2 user out of the ones that I just mentioned was probably Count Dooku, and you can see Count Dooku's skill in Makashi in episodes 2 and 3. The third form created by the Jedi was Form 3, also known as Soresu. With the emergence of blasters, the Jedi created Form 3 to help in countering blaster fires, since Form 1 and Form 2 were mostly about fighting other melee weapons, mostly lightsabers. Form 3 emphasized reflecting blaster bolts back towards the enemy. In lightsaber combat, Form 3 was one of the most defensive styles. It involved a lot of blocking and analyzing and waiting until there was a gap in the enemy's defenses or the enemy ran out of stamina and then they would attack. Form 3 users could defend against multiple blaster and lightsaber wielding opponents. Users of this form also needed high mental fortitude and lots of physical stamina and agility so they could wait until the perfect moment to attack. To master Soresu, the user had to commit all of their mental strength to examine every move the enemy made. In this manner, the Soresu master prepared to take full advantage of the enemy's most exploitable openings. Form 3 also required a calm and focused manner to fight effectively. But if the user put down their defenses even for one moment and left themselves open, it could end very badly. A few well-known Form 3 users were Barriss Offee, Luminara Unduli, and most notably, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi was one of the best, if not the best, Form 3 user at the time, and you can see him very effectively use Form 3 against Anakin in Episode 3. The next form to be created was Form 4, also known as Ataru. Ataru was the first real aggressive combat style, which was the opposite of Form 3. However, Ataru did use some defensive movements from Form 3. It involved acrobatic moves like flips and fast movements to catch the enemy off guard. This form emphasized using the Force to enhance physical attributes like speed and agility. The goal of Ataru was to tire out your opponent by using constant and fast attacks until the opponent became overwhelmed and could not defend themselves. Because of this, Ataru was a very demanding form, both physically and through the Force. On the battlefield, a master of Form 4 was a blur of motion and flashing lightsaber strikes, practically unable to be seen until it's too late. The most notable users are Ezra Bridger, Aayla Secura, Qui-Gon Jinn, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker also used Form 4 occasionally, and most notably when he fought Dooku with 2 lightsabers in Episode 2. The next form created by the Jedi was Form 5, also known as Shien or Djem So. This form was another physically demanding form like Form 4. Form 5 was developed by practitioners of Form 3 who saw the need for better offensive capabilities, but still had a strong defense. Form 5's Shien variant was the first to appear. Shien's primary focus was to use a lightsaber to deflect blaster bolts back at the enemy. Although it lacked melee combat skills, it was incredibly effective when fighting blaster-wielding opponents. Centuries later, the second variant, Djem So, was created. This new form addressed the weaknesses of melee combat with Shien, while still keeping the effective aspects of the latter form. Djem So used strong, unbreakable blocks with quick transitions and counterattacks. Djem So users used the defensive capabilities of Form 3 and combined it with attacks to force openings in an attacker's defense. Although this was one of the least mobile forms, effective use of Form 5 required lots of stamina and speed to catch the enemy off guard and hit them with powerful strikes before they could defend. Djem So provided users with strong lightsaber and blaster combat skills, which is why it was such a popular form. The most notable practitioners of this form were Adi Gallia, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, Ahsoka Tano, Plo Koon, and Luke Skywalker. However, Luke did not traditionally learn Form 5. Instead, he mirrored the techniques that Vader used against Kenobi in Episode 4, and he eventually used them against Vader in Episode 6. The next form created by the Jedi was Form 6, also known as Niman. Niman was one of the most popular forms in the Jedi Order, and it was even the standard of the Jedi Order. It was quite a balanced form, and it incorporated parts of all previous forms, but it didn't have any defining traits that made it different from other forms. Since Form 6 used all previous forms, the user didn't master any of the forms, and thus didn't achieve the full strengths of any of the forms, and many Jedi thought of it as a diluted culmination of Forms 1 to 6. It didn't make it bad though. It had good offense and defense. It wasn't physically demanding either. This form had some lightsaber training, but not as much as the other forms. Instead, it took an advantage of Force abilities. like Force Push and Force Pull. They used these abilities to manipulate the opponent and get them in a vulnerable position. Many practitioners of Niman used martial arts abilities to compensate for the fact that they didn't have great lightsaber training. All in all, this form wasn't incredibly strong in any aspects, but it wasn't weak in any areas either. The most famous user of Niman is Darth Maul, although it wasn't his main form, but he did use it against Obi-Wan Kenobi in Episode 1. The final form, and the most interesting form, is Form 7, also known as Juyo or Vaapad. Although this form was the last to have an official name, similar practices have been around since the creation of the first form. And there's a good reason the Jedi didn't make it an official form. Juyo was such an aggressive form that many Jedi who used this form turned to the dark side. Juyo was the most aggressive and unpredictable form of the 7. This is because the user had to get close to the dark side and draw from their anger to use this form effectively. It was such a controversial form in the Jedi Order that they banned it for many centuries. Eventually, they let some very experienced members of the Jedi Order use it. Juyo required immense physical and emotional strength to use without falling to the dark side. One of the most prominent users of this form is Mace Windu. Windu created his own distinct form of Juyo, called Vaapad. Where Juyo required the user to give in to their emotions, Vaapad did not. Vaapad required the user to push away their anger and not give in. In combat, this style was fast and it used rapid strikes against the enemy. Vaapad was still very aggressive and very unpredictable like Juyo, but not as much as the original form. Other than Windu, the most notable users of the form were Darth Maul and of course Darth Sidious. So those are the 7 forms of lightsaber combat. I hope you found this video interesting and I hope you enjoyed it. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.